Inflation is a crucial economic indicator, and understanding how it's measured is essential for making informed decisions. Two of the most widely referenced metrics are the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, and the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, known as PCE. Both aim to capture changes in the cost of living, but they do so in different ways. In this video, we'll break down the key differences between CPI and PCE, guiding you through a decision checklist to help you choose the right metric for your needs. Let's start by understanding what each measure represents and why they matter. Consumer Price Index, or CPI, perhaps the most familiar measure of inflation. It tracks the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a basket of goods and services. This basket includes items like food, housing, clothing, transportation, and medical care. The CPI is widely used by policymakers, businesses, and individuals to assess price trends and make economic decisions. It's also the metric often cited in news reports about inflation. But what exactly goes into the CPI and how is it calculated? Let's take a closer look. CPI is calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It uses a fixed basket of goods and services, meaning the items and their weights are determined based on consumer spending patterns from a specific period. Prices are collected monthly from thousands of retail and service establishments. The index reflects price changes for this basket, allowing for easy comparison over time. However, because the basket is fixed, it may not fully capture shifts in consumer behavior or the introduction of new products. This is one of the limitations to keep in mind when using CPI. Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, or PCE, is another major inflation measure. It's produced by the Bureau of Economic Analysis and covers a broader range of goods and services than CPI. PCE tracks the prices of all goods and services consumed by households, including those purchased on their behalf, such as employer-provided healthcare. This makes PCE a more comprehensive measure of consumer spending. It's the preferred inflation gauge for the Federal Reserve when setting monetary policy. But what makes PCE different from CPI in practice? Like the CPI, the PCE uses a dynamic basket of goods and services. This means the weights assigned to different items can change as consumer spending habits evolve. The PCE draws on a wider range of data sources, including business surveys and government reports, to estimate prices. This approach allows PCE to better reflect changes in consumption patterns and the introduction of new products. As a result, PCE tends to show slightly lower inflation rates compared to CPI. Understanding this calculation difference is key to interpreting the numbers. One of the most significant differences between CPI and PCE is their coverage. CPI focuses on out-of-pocket expenditures by urban consumers, while PCE includes all goods and services consumed by households, even if someone else pays for them. For example, PCE captures employer-paid health insurance and government-provided benefits, which CPI does not. This broader scope makes PCE more comprehensive, but it can also make direct comparisons challenging. Knowing what each index covers helps you choose the right one for your analysis. Another key distinction is how each index weights its components. CPI uses fixed weights based on a specific survey period, while PCE adjusts its weights over time as consumer behavior changes. This means that if people start spending more on technology and less on clothing, PCE will reflect that shift more quickly than CPI. The dynamic weighting in PCE helps it stay relevant as the economy evolves, but it also means the index can be more complex to interpret. Understanding these weighting methods is crucial for accurate analysis. CPI and PCE also differ in their data sources. The CPI relies mainly on household surveys and direct price collection from retailers and service providers. In contrast, PCE uses a combination of business surveys, government data, and other economic reports. This broader data collection allows PCE to capture a wider range of transactions, including those not directly paid for by consumers. The difference in data sources contributes to the variations in reported inflation rates between the two indices. Formulas used to calculate CPI and PCE are not identical. CPI uses a last year's formula, which measures the cost of purchasing a fixed basket of goods and services. PCE, on the other hand, uses a Fisher-Ideal formula, which accounts for changes in both prices and quantities consumed. This means PCE can better capture substitution effects, where consumers switch to cheaper alternatives as prices rise. The formula difference is a technical detail, but it has a real impact on the reported inflation rates. An advantage of the PCE index is its ability to account for the substitution effect. When prices for certain goods rise, consumers may switch to less expensive alternatives. The dynamic basket and Fisher-Ideal formula used in PCE allow it to reflect these changes in consumer behavior. In contrast, the fixed basket in CPI does not adjust as quickly, potentially overstating inflation if consumers are actively substituting. This makes PCE a more flexible and responsive measure in changing economic conditions. CPI and PCE are used for different purposes. CPI is commonly used for adjusting Social Security payments, wage contracts, and other government benefits. It's also the metric most people are familiar with from news reports. PCE, on the other hand, is the Federal Reserve's preferred measure for setting monetary policy. Understanding the intended use of each index can help you decide which one is more relevant for your analysis or decision-making process. CPI's main strength lies in its simplicity and transparency. Because it uses a fixed basket, it's easy to understand and track over time. The methodology is well established and the data is widely available. CPI is also directly tied to the spending patterns of urban consumers, making it a reliable measure for most people. These strengths make CPI a popular choice for cost of living adjustments and public communication about inflation. Despite its strengths, CPI has some notable limitations. The A fixed basket approach means it may not capture changes in consumer preferences or the introduction of new products. It also excludes some expenditures, like employer-paid healthcare, which can be significant. As a result, CPI may overstate inflation if consumers are substituting cheaper goods or if spending patterns shift. Being aware of these limitations is important when interpreting CPI data. PCE index's greatest strength is its comprehensive coverage and adaptability. By including all household consumption, even third-party payments, PCE provides a more complete picture of inflation. Its dynamic basket and use of the Fisher-Ideal formula allow it to adjust to changing consumer behavior and new products. This makes PCE a more accurate reflection of actual spending patterns, which is why it's favored by the Federal Reserve for policy decision. PCE is not without its drawbacks. Its methodology is more complex, making it harder for the general public to understand. The use of multiple data sources can introduce estimation errors, and the index may not always align with the spending patterns of individual consumers. Additionally, because PCE includes third-party payments, it may not reflect the out-of-pocket experience of most households. These factors should be considered when using PCE for analysis. Historically, the CPI tends to report slightly higher inflation rates than the PCE. This is due to differences in coverage, weighting, and the ability to account for substitution effects. For example, when prices rise, PCE's dynamic basket can adjust more quickly, often resulting in lower reported inflation. Understanding these trends can help you interpret the numbers and avoid confusion when comparing the two indices. Federal Reserve prefers the PCE index because it offers a more comprehensive and flexible measure of inflation. PCE's dynamic basket and broad coverage allow it to better reflect changes in consumer behavior and the overall economy. This makes it a more reliable tool for setting monetary policy. The Fed's preference for PCE is a key reason why it's important to understand both indices, especially if you're interested in economic policy or financial market. Deciding between CPI and PCE, start by clarifying your purpose. Are you analyzing inflation for personal budgeting, adjusting contracts, or studying economic policy? CPI is often better for personal and contractual uses, while PCE is more relevant for macroeconomic analysis and policy decisions. Knowing your goal will help you select the most appropriate index and interpret the results accurately. Consider the availability and frequency of data. CPI data is released monthly and is widely reported in the media, making it easy to access and use. PCE data is also released monthly, but it may be less familiar to the general public. If you need timely and widely recognized data, CPI might be the better choice. However, for more comprehensive analysis, PCE offers broader coverage. Think about the scope of your analysis. If you're interested in out-of-pocket expenses for urban consumers, CPI is the way to go. If you want a broader view that includes all household consumption, including third-party payments, PCE is more suitable. Matching the index's coverage to your needs ensures your analysis is relevant and accurate. You prefer a fixed or dynamic approach to weighting? CPI's fixed basket makes it easier to track changes over time, but it may not capture shifts in spending habits. PCE's dynamic weighting reflects real-time changes in consumer behavior, providing a more current picture of inflation. Your preference for stability or adaptability can guide your choice between the two indices. If accounting for substitution effects is important to your analysis, PCE is the better choice. Its methodology allows it to reflect changes in consumer behavior as prices shift, while CPI's fixed basket does not. This can make a significant difference in periods of rapid price changes or when consumers are actively seeking alternatives. For those interested in economic policy or financial markets, PCE is the preferred index. It's the benchmark used by the Federal Reserve and is considered more comprehensive. If your analysis is aimed at understanding or predicting policy moves, focusing on PCE will provide more relevant insights. If your goal is to communicate inflation trends to the general public, CPI is often the better choice. It's widely recognized, easy to explain, and directly tied to the spending patterns of most households. For public-facing reports or media coverage, CPI's familiarity is a major advantage. For adjusting contracts, wages, or government benefits, CPI is typically used. Its fixed basket and transparent methodology make it a reliable benchmark for cost-of-living adjustments. If you're working with legal or financial agreements, CPI is likely the standard reference. For academic or macroeconomic research, PCE is often preferred due to its comprehensive coverage and adaptability. Its methodology aligns more closely with modern economic theory and provides a fuller picture of consumer spending. Researchers looking for depth and accuracy may find PCE more suitable. If you need to compare inflation across countries, CPI is usually the standard. Most countries publish a CPI or similar index, making cross-country comparisons easier. However, be aware that methodologies can still vary, so always check the details before drawing conclusions. For long-term historical analysis, CPI is often more useful due to its long data series and consistent methodology. PCE data is available for several decades, but CPI's history stretches back even further, making it valuable for studying long-term trends. For personal finance decisions such as budgeting or tracking cost-of-living changes, CPI is generally more relevant. Its focus on out-of-pocket expenses aligns closely with individual experiences, making it a practical tool for everyday financial planning. For economic forecasting and modeling, PCE's comprehensive coverage and adaptability make it a strong choice. Its ability to reflect real-time changes in consumer behavior provides a more accurate basis for predicting future trends and policy impacts. If you value simplicity and ease of understanding, CPI is the better choice. Its fixed basket and straightforward methodology make it accessible to a wide audience. PCE's complexity offers more accuracy but may require more effort to interpret. Choose the index that matches your comfort level with data analysis. Both CPI and PCE are updated monthly, but CPI data is typically released earlier in the month. If you need the most current information as soon as possible, CPI may be preferable. However, for comprehensive analysis, waiting for PCE data can be worthwhile. CPI is the inflation measure most often cited in the media and by the public. If you want your analysis or communication to resonate with a broad audience, CPI's familiarity is a significant advantage. PCE, while more comprehensive, may require additional explanation. If your analysis requires adjusting for substitution effects, PCE is the better tool. Its methodology captures changes in consumer choices as prices shift, providing a more accurate measure of true inflation. This is especially important in periods of rapid economic change. For analyses where relatability to the average consumer is important, CPI is usually the better choice. Its focus on out-of-pocket expenses makes it easier for individuals to understand and apply to their own lives. PCE's broader scope, while valuable, can be less relatable for personal decision-making. If your focus is on the impact of policy decisions, especially those made by the Federal Reserve, PCE is the index to watch. Its comprehensive methodology and adaptability make it the benchmark for monetary policy, influencing interest rates and economic forecasts. CPI's methodology is highly transparent with detailed documentation and clear calculation steps. This makes it easy to audit and understand. PCE's methodology, while robust, is more complex and may be less transparent to non-experts. If transparency is a priority, CPI is the better option. PCE data is subject to more frequent revisions as new information becomes available, while CPI data is rarely revised after initial release. If you need stable, unchanging data, CPI may be preferable. For the most accurate and up-to-date analysis, PCE's revisions can be an advantage. For legal and regulatory purposes, CPI is often specified in statutes and contracts. Its long history and widespread acceptance make it the standard for official adjustments. If your analysis involves compliance or legal benchmarks, CPI is likely the required index. CPI provides a household-level view of inflation, focusing on the direct experience of consumers. PCE offers a macroeconomic perspective, capturing all consumption in the economy. Choose CPI for individual or household analysis and PCE for broader economic studies. CPI's methodology has remained consistent over time, making it ideal for long-term trend analysis. PCE's methodology can change as new data sources and methods are introduced. If consistency is important for your analysis, CPI is the better choice. CPI provides detailed breakdowns by category, region, and demographic group, making it useful for granular analysis. PCE offers less detailed breakdowns but covers a broader range of expenditures. Choose based on the level of detail you need. CPI data is easily accessible through government websites and widely reported in the media. PCE data is also available but may require more effort to locate and interpret. For quick access and ease of use, CPI is the more user-friendly option. When forming inflation expectations, both indices can be useful. CPI reflects the public's perception while PCE aligns with policy decisions. Using both can provide a well-rounded view, but be clear about which index you're referencing in your analysis. Summary: both CPI and PCE are valuable tools for measuring inflation, each with its own strengths and limitations. The right choice depends on your specific needs, whether it's personal finance, policy analysis, or academic research. By understanding the differences in coverage, weighting, data sources, and methodology, you can make informed decisions and interpret inflation data with confidence. Use the checklist provided to guide your selection, and remember that context is key when comparing these important economic indicators.